Single black mom falls asleep on CEO's shoulder during flight, and wakes to a note that stops her cold. The fluorescent lights of Gate 47 buzzed overhead like angry wasps, and Danielle Washington felt every vibration in her bones. She shifted Marcus closer to her side, his 8-year-old body curled against her hip as he dozed fitfully in the uncomfortable plastic chair. The red-eye to Denver was delayed, again, and she watched the digital clock above the departure board tick closer to midnight. "Mama, when are we going?" Marcus mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. "Soon, baby. Soon." The lie came easily now. She'd been telling herself the same thing for months. Soon she'd have enough money saved. Soon she'd launch her business. Soon their life would change. Danielle's phone buzzed against her thigh. A text from her sister. "You sure about this trip? That conference registration alone costs more than your grocery budget." She typed back quickly. "It's an investment. The Wellness Women's Summit could open doors." What she didn't mention was that she'd already maxed out her credit card for the plane tickets. Or that she'd been living on ramen noodles for 2 weeks to afford the conference pass. Or that this was her absolute last shot at making something of herself before she had to give up completely, and accept that some dreams were just too big for girls like her. The gate agent's voice crackled over the intercom. "Flight 1247 to Denver is now boarding." Danielle gathered their belongings, a battered laptop bag, Marcus's Spider-Man backpack, and a purse held together with safety pins, and joined the shuffle toward the jet bridge. Economy class, middle seats, somewhere near the back where the engine noise would keep her awake. Perfect. As they settled into row 23, Danielle pulled out a stack of napkins she'd grabbed from the airport McDonald's. Marcus wrinkled his nose. "Mama, what are you doing?" "Working, sweetheart." She clicked her pen and started writing across the rough paper. The napkins were all she had left. Her notebook was full, her laptop battery was dead, and her phone was at 12%. But ideas kept coming, and she'd learned the hard way that inspiration didn't wait for convenient moments. "Wellness Mama for single moms, by a single mom," she wrote at the top of the first napkin. Underneath, she sketched out her vision: monthly wellness boxes filled with practical self-care items that actual working mothers could use. Face masks that worked in 5 minutes. Protein bars that didn't taste like cardboard. Journals with prompts that took 60 seconds to complete. The man in the aisle seat glanced over as she wrote, but Danielle barely noticed. She was in her zone now, the place where exhaustion met determination and somehow produced clarity. She scribbled numbers in the margins: startup costs, potential profit margins, target demographics. Her handwriting grew smaller and more frantic as she tried to capture everything before it slipped away. "Mama, you're mumbling again," Marcus whispered. Was she? Danielle hadn't realized. She did that sometimes when she was really focused, talking through problems out loud. It was a habit left over from her college days, before Marcus, before the divorce, before everything fell apart and she had to rebuild from scratch. She looked over at her son, his dark eyes serious in the dim cabin light. At 8, he was already too aware of their struggles, too quick to notice when she skipped meals or when the electricity bill came with a pink slip. She reached over and smoothed his hair. "Just thinking about the future, baby." "Our future? The one where we have our own house?" "Yes." "With a yard where I can have a dog? Maybe even 2 dogs." Marcus smiled and settled back against his seat. "I hope your meeting goes good, Mama." It wasn't really a meeting, just a conference where she'd paid $300 to sit in the back row and listen to successful entrepreneurs talk about their journeys. But she'd heard that investors sometimes attended these events, looking for the next big thing. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot she had. The plane began to taxi, and Danielle felt the familiar mixture of anxiety and hope that came with taking risks. She'd been taking them her whole life, dropping out of college when she got pregnant, leaving her ex-husband when he started drinking more than working, moving to a new city with nothing but a toddler and a dream of something better. As they lifted off, she continued writing on the napkins. Marketing strategies. Product descriptions. A mission statement that made her eyes water. Every mom deserves to feel beautiful, strong, and supported, especially when she's doing it alone. The woman across the aisle was reading a romance novel. The businessman in front of her was already asleep, his laptop closed on his tray table. Normal people doing normal things. Danielle wondered what it would feel like to be normal, to not have every decision weighted with the fear of failure. She glanced at the man in the aisle seat. He was wearing a navy hoodie and jeans, nothing fancy, but there was something about him that suggested money. The way he declined the airline's headphones because he had his own expensive-looking pair. The casual way he'd ordered a drink without checking the price. Maybe he was just another tired traveler, but Danielle had gotten good at reading people over the years. The flight attendant dimmed the cabin lights, and gradually, the other passengers settled into sleep. Danielle tried to stay awake, tried to keep working, but her body had other plans. She'd been up since 4:30 that morning, working her first job at the bakery, then racing home to get Marcus ready for school, then rushing to her second job at the medical office, then picking up Marcus, making dinner, helping with homework, and somehow finding time to pack for this trip. Her eyes grew heavy. The napkins slipped from her fingers. The pen rolled across her lap. Just for a few minutes, she told herself. Just a quick rest. But as the plane hummed through the darkness above the clouds, carrying her toward an uncertain future, Danielle Washington finally surrendered to the exhaustion that had been her constant companion for so long. Her head fell back against the seat, then gradually, inevitably, found its way to the shoulder of the stranger beside her. In her dreams, she was still writing, still planning, still believing that somehow, someway, she would find a way to build the life she and Marcus deserved. She didn't know that the man whose shoulder she rested on was about to become the answer to prayers she hadn't even dared to pray. She didn't know that her scattered napkin notes would soon be worth more than she'd ever imagined. She didn't know that sometimes, the most important business meetings happen at 30,000 feet, when you're too tired to pretend to be anything other than exactly who you are. The gentle turbulence woke Danielle first, a soft jolt that made her stomach flutter. She blinked slowly, her mind foggy with the kind of deep sleep that only comes from complete exhaustion. Something was wrong with her pillow. It was too firm, too warm, and it smelled like expensive cologne mixed with coffee. Her eyes snapped open. She was leaning against a stranger's shoulder. "Oh my God!" she whispered, jerking upright so fast that her neck cracked. "I'm so sorry, It's okay," the man said quietly, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Really?" Danielle's face burned with embarrassment. In the dim cabin light, she could see him more clearly now, dark hair slightly mussed from where her head had been resting, kind eyes that crinkled at the corners, a face that seemed somehow familiar though she was certain they'd never met. "I can't believe I did that," she muttered, running her hands through her hair. "I don't usually. I'm not the type to just. You looked like you needed the rest," he said simply. "How long has it been since you've had a full night's sleep?" The question was so direct, so understanding, that it caught her off guard. She glanced over at Marcus, who was still curled up against the window, his Spider-Man backpack clutched to his chest like a security blanket. "I honestly can't remember," she admitted. "Between work and—" She gestured vaguely at Marcus, at the napkins scattered across her tray table, at the weight of everything she couldn't quite put into words. The man, Ethan, though she didn't know his name yet, followed her gaze to the napkins. Even in the low light, he could make out her handwriting, business plans, product ideas, financial projections scrawled in the margins. He'd seen hundreds of business proposals in his career, polished presentations with perfect graphics and market research. But there was something raw and honest about these napkin notes that intrigued him. "Wellness Mama," he read softly. "For single moms by a single mom." Danielle's hand shot out to cover the napkins, her cheeks flushing again. It's nothing. Just some ideas I've been playing with." "Ideas that keep you up at night?" She looked at him sharply. There was no judgment in his voice, no condescension. Just curiosity. "Yeah," she said. "I guess they do." The plane hit another patch of turbulence, and Marcus stirred, automatically reaching for his mother. Danielle pulled him closer, and he settled back into sleep without fully waking. "He's beautiful," Ethan said. "What's his name?" "Marcus. He's 8. She smoothed her son's hair. "This is actually his first time flying. He's been so excited about it, asking me a million questions about how planes work, what clouds feel like to touch." She trailed off, realizing she was rambling to a complete stranger. "And you're traveling for business?" Danielle hesitated. Was she? The conference felt more like a desperate Hail Mary than a legitimate business trip. But something about this man made her want to be honest. "There's a wellness conference in Denver. I saved up for months to attend. I'm hoping to." She stopped, shaking her head. "This is crazy. I don't even know your name, and I'm telling you my life story." "Ethan," he said, extending his hand. "And for what it's worth, I think Wellness Mama sounds like exactly what the market needs." His handshake was firm, confident. Danielle noticed his watch, simple but clearly expensive. His clothes were casual, but the fabric looked high quality. Everything about him suggested success, which made his interest in her napkin scribblings even more puzzling. "What do you do?" she asked. "I'm in lifestyle products," he said vaguely. "What about you? Besides the wellness thing?" "I work at a bakery in the mornings, medical office in the afternoons." She gathered the napkins, suddenly self-conscious about her scattered thoughts. Not exactly the typical entrepreneur profile. "I don't know about that," Ethan said. "Some of the best business ideas come from people who've actually lived the problem they're trying to solve." As they talked, Danielle found herself relaxing. Ethan had a way of listening that made her feel heard, really heard, maybe for the first time in years. He asked thoughtful questions about her target market, her distribution ideas, her vision for the brand. He didn't talk down to her or dismiss her concerns about funding and competition. "The thing is," she said, her voice growing stronger, "I know what moms like me need because I am a mom like me. I know what it's like to stand in Target at 10 at night, exhausted, trying to find something, anything, that might make tomorrow a little easier. I know what it's like to want to take care of yourself but not having the time or energy or money to figure out how." She was talking faster now, her hands moving as she spoke. "These wellness companies, they're all founded by women who've never had to choose between buying face cream and buying groceries. They don't understand that self-care for real moms looks different. It has to be fast, affordable, practical." "Just one chance?" she murmured, her eyes growing heavy again. "That's all I need. Just one chance to show what I can do. For Marcus." Ethan watched as she drifted off again, her head eventually finding its way back to his shoulder. This time, he didn't mind. In fact, he carefully reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. The napkin on top of her pile was covered in her handwriting, but one phrase stood out clearly. "For single moms by a single mom." Below it, she'd written a mission statement that made him pause. "Every mom deserves to feel beautiful, strong, and supported, especially when she's doing it alone." He'd heard countless pitches in boardrooms, seen endless PowerPoint presentations promising to revolutionize industries. But none of them had the authenticity of these napkin notes. None of them came from a place of such genuine need and understanding. Quietly, so as not to wake her, Ethan took a photo of the napkin. He had a feeling this sleeping woman was about to change everything. The captain's voice crackled through the intercom like a thunderclap in Danielle's dreams. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our descent into Denver. Please return your seats to their upright positions and prepare for landing." Danielle's eyes flew open, her heart hammering against her ribs. The cabin was bright now, morning sunlight streaming through the windows. Passengers around her were stretching, gathering their belongings, checking their phones. She felt disoriented, like she'd been transported through time. "Marcus, baby, wake up," she whispered, gently shaking her son's shoulder. "We're here." Marcus rubbed his eyes and peered out the window at the Rocky Mountains rising like ancient guardians around the city. "Wow, Mama! Look how big they are." "I know, sweetheart. Pretty amazing, right? But even as she spoke, Danielle's attention was drawn to the empty seat beside her. The man, Ethan, was gone. His hoodie, his expensive headphones, his carry-on bag. All of it vanished like he never existed at all. Had she dreamed their entire conversation? The embarrassment of falling asleep on his shoulder, the way he'd listened to her rambling about Wellness Mama, the genuine interest in his eyes when she talked about her mission to help other single mothers. It felt so real, but exhaustion could play tricks on the mind. She started gathering her scattered napkins, her business plans scribbled in desperate midnight handwriting. As she reached for the last one, her fingers brushed against something that definitely hadn't been there before, a piece of paper, folded once, sitting precisely in the center of her tray table. Her name was written on the outside in neat, confident handwriting, Danielle. With trembling fingers, she unfolded the note. The words hit her like a physical blow. Call me, I want to invest. Your passion is exactly what this industry needs. Don't let anyone tell you that napkin notes can't change the world. Ethan Cole. Below that, a phone number. And at the bottom, embossed in small letters, a company logo she'd seen 1,000 times on products she'd admired but could never afford. Cole Lifestyle Brands. The napkin slipped from her suddenly nerveless fingers, scattering across her lap like autumn leaves. Ethan Cole. The Ethan Cole. The man whose company had revolutionized the wellness industry, who'd built an empire on authentic, accessible self-care products. The entrepreneur she'd studied, whose interviews she'd watched on YouTube during Marcus's nap time, whose business philosophy she tried to emulate in her own tiny way. She'd been sleeping on Ethan Cole's shoulder. She'd complained about expensive wellness products to Ethan Cole. She told the founder of a billion-dollar company that industry leaders didn't understand real mothers. "Oh God," she whispered, covering her face with her hands. "Oh God, oh God, oh God." "Mama, what's wrong?" Marcus asked, concern creeping into his voice. Danielle looked at the note again, certain she must have misread it. But no, there it was, in black and white. "I want to invest." The words that single mothers like her dreamed of hearing, words that could change everything, written by a man who actually had the power to make them real. "Is it bad news?" Marcus pressed, trying to peer over her shoulder. "No, baby. It's—" She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Was it good news? Or was it some kind of cruel joke? Why would Ethan Cole want to invest in her ridiculous napkin scribblings? She was nobody, a bakery worker who couldn't even afford conference tickets without maxing out her credit cards. The plane touched down with a gentle bump, and passengers began standing, reaching for overhead bins, eager to start their days. Danielle remained frozen in her seat, the note clutched in her shaking hands. "Maybe he felt sorry for me," she murmured. "Maybe he was just being kind." But even as she said it, she remembered the way he'd listened to her ideas, the intelligent questions he'd asked, the genuine interest in his eyes. That hadn't been pity. That had been respect? The flight attendant approached the row. "Ma'am, we've landed. You'll need to gather your belongings." Danielle nodded mechanically, stuffing the note into her purse like it was made of dynamite. She helped Marcus with his backpack, collected her scattered napkins, and followed the crowd toward the exit. But her mind wasn't on deplaning or baggage claim or finding their hotel. It was stuck on a single, impossible thought. What if this was real? What if Ethan Cole, the Ethan Cole, really did want to invest in Wellness Mama? What if her napkin notes weren't just the desperate scribblings of an exhausted single mother, but the foundation of something bigger than she'd ever dared to imagine? As they walked through the jet bridge, Marcus chattering excitedly about their adventure, Danielle's fingers kept drifting to her purse, to the note that felt like it was burning a hole through the fabric. She'd come to Denver with $300 and a prayer, hoping to network with other entrepreneurs, maybe hand out a few business cards she'd printed at Kinko's. She never imagined she'd leave with a phone number that could change her life. But first, she had to find the courage to use it. The question that terrified her most wasn't whether Ethan Cole was serious about investing. It was whether she was brave enough to find out. In the bustling Denver airport, Surrounded by travelers heading toward their own dreams and destinations, Danielle Washington stood at the crossroads of her life, clutching a note that would either lift her up or break her heart completely. She just had to decide which one she was ready for. 3 days. 3 days of staring at the note until the edges were worn soft from her fingers tracing over Ethan Cole's handwriting. 3 days of picking up her phone, dialing 6 digits, then hanging up before the call could connect. 3 days of wondering if she was losing her mind. The Wellness Women's Summit had been a blur of networking sessions and keynote speeches that felt surreal after her plane encounter. Every time someone mentioned Cole lifestyle brands, which happened frequently since they were practically the gold standard of the industry, Danielle's stomach would lurch. She'd attended workshops on pitching to investors and building your brand, taking notes with trembling hands, all while the most important business card of her life sat folded in her wallet. Now they were back in their cramped hotel room, Marcus sprawled on one of the twin beds watching cartoons on the ancient TV while she sat cross-legged on the other, the note spread out before her like a map to buried treasure. "You're doing the staring thing again," Marcus observed without looking away from the screen. "I'm not staring. I'm thinking. You've been thinking for 3 days. My teacher says thinking without doing is just worrying." Out of the mouths of babes. Danielle looked at her son, this wise, patient little boy who'd watched her chase dreams and stumble through setbacks without ever losing faith in her. He deserved better than a mother who was too scared to seize the chance of a lifetime. "You're right," she said finally. "But what if I call and it's a joke? What if he doesn't remember me? What if—" "Mama!" Marcus muted the TV and turned to face her, his expression serious beyond his years. "You always tell me that scared feelings and excited feelings are the same thing. Your body just doesn't know which one to pick." She stared at him, amazed. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just worry too much to notice sometimes." He grinned, and she saw her own stubbornness reflected in his eyes. "Besides, what's the worst thing that could happen?" He could say no. "And what's the best thing?" Danielle closed her eyes, allowing herself to imagine it for the first time in 3 days. He could say yes. "So you have a 50-50 chance of getting what you want, and a 100% chance of staying exactly where you are if you don't try." Marcus unmuted the TV. "Seems like easy math to me." 20 minutes later, Danielle found herself in the hotel's dingy lobby, the note clutched in her sweaty palm. The phone rang once. Twice. On the third ring, she was already preparing her apology for bothering him when a familiar voice answered. "Ethan Cole." Her throat went dry. Hi. This is Danielle. From the flight? The one who fell asleep on your shoulder and completely embarrassed herself?" A warm chuckle came through the phone. "Danielle. I was wondering when you'd call. I've been waiting." "You've been waiting? For 3 days? I told you I was interested in investing. I meant it." His voice was kind but businesslike. "Are you still in Denver?" "Yes, until tomorrow morning." "Perfect. Can you be at my office at 2 o'clock? I'd like to hear your pitch." Her pitch. The words sent panic shooting through her nervous system. I don't really have a formal pitch. Just the napkin notes and some ideas and—" "Danielle." His voice was gentle but firm. "Bring exactly what you have. No more, no less. I want to hear from you, not from some consultant who's never lived your life." An hour later, she stood in front of a gleaming downtown office building, Marcus's hand tucked securely in hers. The lobby was all marble and glass, the kind of place where her second-hand conference blazer felt like a costume. "You look nervous," Marcus whispered as they rode the elevator to the 20th floor. "I am nervous." "Good nervous or bad nervous?" She thought about it. "I honestly don't know anymore." The elevator doors opened to reveal a reception area that looked like it belonged in a magazine. The receptionist, a polished woman who probably earned more than Danielle made in 6 months, smiled professionally. "Ms. Washington? Mr. Cole is ready for you." They were led down a hallway lined with awards and magazine covers, past conference rooms where serious-looking people discussed quarterly projections and market penetration. At the end of the hall, massive double doors opened to reveal Ethan Cole's office. He looked different here, more commanding, more CEO-like in his tailored shirt and expensive suit. But when he saw her, his face broke into the same warm smile she remembered from the plane. "Danielle? And you must be Marcus." He knelt down to the boy's level. "I heard you're the one who convinced your mom to make this call." Marcus beamed with pride. "She was scared, but I told her scared and excited feel the same. Very wise advice." Ethan stood and gestured to the chairs in front of his desk. "Please have a seat. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? Hot chocolate for Marcus?" As they settled in, Danielle felt the surreal quality of the moment wash over her. Here she was, in one of the most powerful offices in the wellness industry, with her napkin notes and her clearance rack blazer, about to pitch her dream to a man who could make it reality. "So," Ethan said, leaning back in his chair, "tell me about Wellness Mama. And please, no corporate speak, no buzzwords. Just tell me what you told me on the plane. Tell me why this matters." Danielle took a deep breath, looked at Marcus for courage, and began to speak. This time, there were no napkins to hide behind, no dim cabin lights to soften her vulnerability. There was just her truth, laid bare in the afternoon sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. And as she talked, she realized that maybe, just maybe, her truth was exactly what the world needed to hear. "Wellness Mama isn't just a business," Danielle began, her voice growing stronger with each word. "It's a lifeline. It's for the mom who's standing in Target at 11 p.m. because that's the only time she can shop without her kids, trying to find something, anything, that might help her feel human again tomorrow." Ethan leaned forward, his attention completely focused on her. Marcus sat quietly beside her, swinging his legs and occasionally nodding as if he'd heard this speech before. "These wellness companies," she continued, gesturing toward the window that overlooked the city, "they're built by women who have nannies and personal trainers and unlimited budgets. They don't understand that real self-care for single mothers looks like face masks you can do while helping with homework. Protein bars that don't cost more than a school lunch. Journals with prompts that take 30 seconds because that's all the time we have." She pulled out her worn napkins, spreading them across his pristine desk without apology. "This is my market research. These are real problems from real women. I know because I am one of them." "Tell me about the subscription model," Ethan said, studying her handwritten notes. "Monthly boxes, but affordable. $24.99. I know that sounds low, but most of us can't justify $50 a month on ourselves. Inside each box, practical items that actually work. A 5-minute meditation app subscription. Energy bites that taste good and give you real energy. A small candle that burns for exactly 1 hour, long enough for a bath after the kids are asleep. And the profit margins?" Danielle's cheeks flushed. "Honestly? I don't know yet. I've been focused on the need, not the numbers. But I know there's a market because I've been living it for 8 years. Instead of looking disappointed, Ethan smiled. "That's exactly the right answer. Too many entrepreneurs get caught up in spreadsheets and forget about the humans they're trying to serve." He stood and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. "Do you know why I started Cole Lifestyle Brands? To help people live better lives. To prove my father wrong." He turned back to her, and for a moment, she saw vulnerability in his eyes that matched her own. "He said I was too soft for business. Too concerned with feelings and not enough with profits. When I started this company, I wanted to show him that caring about people and making money weren't mutually exclusive. Did you? The company's worth $3 billion now. But my father died 5 years ago, still thinking I was wasting my potential on feel-good nonsense." He returned to his desk, his expression serious. "I tell you this because I want you to understand something. I've built this empire, but I've lost sight of why I started it. I've seen hundreds of pitches, funded dozens of companies, but they all sound the same. Corporate speak. Market penetration. Scalability metrics. He picked up one of her napkins, studying her handwriting. This is the first time in years someone has sat in that chair and talked about helping people instead of dominating markets. Danielle felt a flutter of hope, quickly followed by a wave of doubt. But I don't know anything about running a big company. I don't have an MBA or a marketing degree. I'm just. You're exactly what this industry needs, Ethan interrupted. But here's what I need you to understand. If we do this, if we partner together, you'll be stepping into a world that will try to change you. Investors will push you to raise prices, cut costs, maximize profits. They'll want to put your face on the boxes but hire someone else to make the real decisions. The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic far below. I'm scared, Danielle admitted finally. Good. That means you understand what's at stake. What if I'm not ready? What if I fail? Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying her face. Can I tell you what I see when I look at you? She nodded. I see someone who's been building a business for 8 years without realizing it. Every time you've figured out how to make a dollar stretch, that's budgeting. Every time you've solved a problem for yourself and Marcus, that's product development. Every time you've helped another mom, that's marketing. He stood and extended his hand. I don't want to invest in Wellness Mama because I think you can be like every other entrepreneur. I want to invest because I know you can be better. Danielle looked at his outstretched hand, then at Marcus, who was watching her with complete faith in his eyes. This was the moment everything changed, not just for her, but for her son, for their future, for all the women who would benefit from products designed by someone who truly understood their struggles. I have conditions, she said, surprising herself with her boldness. Ethan's eyebrows rose. I'm listening. I want to hire other single mothers, not just as inspiration but as partners. I want to keep the prices affordable, even if it means smaller margins. And I want to promise that we'll never lose sight of why we started this. Done. He smiled. Anything else? I want to stay true to who I am. Napkins and all. Especially the napkins, Ethan said, and reached across the desk to shake her hand. Welcome to the bigger picture, Danielle. Now let's change the world. 18 months later, Danielle stood backstage at the Denver Convention Center, her hands shaking as she adjusted the microphone clip to her blazer. This blazer was different from the clearance rack one she'd worn to Ethan's office. Tailored, confident, the kind of jacket a successful CEO might wear. But in her pocket, she still carried a folded napkin with her original business plan scrawled across it. Some things were too important to leave behind. Mama, you look nervous, Marcus whispered from beside her. At almost 10 now, he was taller, more serious, but his eyes still held the same unwavering faith in her that had carried them both through everything. I am nervous, she admitted, peering through the curtain at the packed auditorium. There are a lot of people out there. Good nervous or bad nervous? She smiled at their old ritual. Definitely good nervous. The convention center was buzzing with excitement for the official launch party of Wellness Mama's retail line. What had started as a subscription box service had grown into something neither she nor Ethan had dared to imagine, a full wellness brand that was about to hit Target shelves nationwide. But more importantly, it had become exactly what she dreamed of on that red-eye flight, a company built by single mothers, for single mothers. 5 minutes, Ms. Washington, the stage manager called out. Danielle's mind drifted back over the whirlwind of the past year and a half. The early days when she'd worked from a cramped office above Ethan's company, learning to navigate conference calls and quarterly projections while still picking Marcus up from school every day. The first focus groups where she'd watched real mothers cry over products that actually understood their lives. The moment their subscription waiting list hit 50,000 women, and she'd realized this wasn't just her dream anymore, it was a movement. There had been challenges, of course. Investors who'd questioned her pricing strategy, board members who'd suggested she hire a more experienced CEO to take over. But Ethan had kept his promise, backing her every time someone tried to push her aside or water down her vision. You ready for this? Ethan appeared beside her, looking polished in his dark suit but somehow more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "Are you kidding? I was born ready. I just didn't know it 18 months ago." He handed her a small gift bag. "A little something for luck." Inside was a leather journal with Wellness Mama embossed on the cover, and on the first page, a photo he'd taken on the plane, her original napkin with "For Single Moms by a Single Mom" written across the top. "Ethan," she started, but he held up a hand. "You changed everything, Danielle. Not just for Wellness Mama, but for me. You reminded me why I started all this in the first place." He gestured toward the stage. "Tonight isn't just about launching a product line. It's about proving that business can have a soul." The stage manager waved them forward. "Places, everyone." Danielle walked onto the stage to thunderous applause, but her eyes immediately found the front row where her team sat. 12 single mothers she'd hired as full partners, not employees. Women who'd been struggling just like her, who now had equity stakes and decision-making power in a company that was about to change their lives forever. 18 months ago," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the packed auditorium, "I was scribbling business plans on McDonald's napkins during a red-eye flight, dreaming of a world where companies actually understood the women they claimed to serve." The audience laughed, and she felt her confidence grow. "Tonight, we're not just launching products. We're launching a promise that self-care doesn't have to be expensive to be effective, that wellness doesn't have to be perfect to be real, and that every mother deserves to feel beautiful, strong, and supported, especially when she's doing it alone." She looked out at the crowd, investors, retailers, journalists, and scattered throughout, dozens of women who looked just like she had 2 years ago, tired, hopeful, doing their best with whatever they had. "Wellness Mama isn't just my company," she continued. "It belongs to every woman who's ever felt invisible, every mother who's put everyone else first, every dreamer who's been told her ideas aren't practical enough or profitable enough or polished enough." The applause was deafening now, but Danielle's attention was drawn to the back of the room where a familiar figure leaned against the wall. A woman in scrubs, probably coming straight from a night shift, holding a Wellness Mama tote bag and wiping tears from her eyes. "To everyone who's ever believed that napkin notes can't change the world," Danielle said, her voice strong and clear, "I have something to show you." Behind her, the screen lit up with their numbers: 2 million subscribers, partnerships with major retailers, job creation for hundreds of single mothers across the country. But more importantly, it showed testimonials from real women whose lives had been touched by products created with genuine understanding and care. As the evening wound down and the last of the guests filtered out, Danielle found herself alone on the stage with Marcus and Ethan. Her son was asleep in one of the front row chairs, exhausted from the excitement of the evening. "So," Ethan said, loosening his tie, "what's next for the woman who conquered the wellness industry with McDonald's napkins?" Danielle looked out at the empty auditorium, then down at the sleeping boy who'd been her motivation through everything. "Honestly, I think I'd like to go home, help Marcus with his homework, and maybe take a bath with one of our lavender bath bombs." "The glamorous life of a CEO," Ethan laughed. "The perfect life of a mom," she corrected. And for the first time since that exhausted night at 30,000 feet, Danielle Washington felt like she had finally, truly, arrived exactly where she was supposed to be.